Today we'll be working in my workbook called The Christ Ministry in Galilee, which covers the years 27 and 28 AD. We have already worked on chapters 1, 2, and 3. We're going to be working on chapter 4 today. So let's take a quick look at the map and see what has happened. We had started, the last book I had written had ended with the woman at the well in Sychar, which is just about in the middle of your map there. Then from Sychar, he travels to Nazareth. And when he's at Nazareth, he is then rejected from his people in Nazareth. And this is the last time they really will consider Nazareth a home. He will move his home. He will reside in Capernaum from here on out. But he travels from Nazareth to Cana, and he heals the official's son while he is in Cana. And then from Cana, he moves and lives in Capernaum. And he calls his first disciples, which is at least the fishermen. And then he heals a demon-possessed man there. And Jesus heals Simon's mother-in-law. This is the one phrase in the whole Bible that lets us know Simon Peter is married. Otherwise, we assume all the rest of them were single and not married. And then after praying, Jesus leaves Capernaum and travels throughout Galilee to preach. And we see him traveling and healing people. And then he also heals a man with leprosy. When he finally comes back to Capernaum, he heals a paralyzed man, and he calls Matthew, who is also known as Levi, in the town of Capernaum. Matthew is an interesting man in the fact that he's probably speaks 3 languages, is very intelligent, and but yet he's also part of the apostles, just like the 4 fishermen. So now we're going to be working on fasting in the new way. So let me go ahead and get there. Okay, so chapter 4, Capernaum and Jerusalem. And then we're doing fasting in the new way, Luke 5, 33 through 39.
They said to him, John's disciples often fast and pray. So do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours go on eating and drinking.
Yeah. Based on where Jesus and his disciples were, who is speaking?
The teachers of law.
Right. The scribes, Pharisees, they're inside the temple-ish area. Which John are they speaking of?
The Baptists.
Right. What do the disciples of the Pharisees and of John the Baptist do that the disciples of Jesus do not do?
Pray often.
Fast and pray. Yeah, fast. They pray a lot, but fasting. John the Baptist still has disciples, and that's a good question. Indeed, he actually does. They continue to follow John even after he points out that Jesus is the Messiah. The reason they stay with John is unknown. However, no record is made of either John or Jesus criticizing them for their loyalty to John instead of Jesus. They even exist long after John the Baptist is killed, and we have a reference to that in Acts 19. One of the reasons why we know this is when John was killed, we saw his disciples burying his body. So we see them show up occasionally in the story. It's just kind of odd that they have stayed the disciples of John and not have gone any further. And then the Pharisees fasted twice a week. This was a man-made law that they made on Mondays and Thursdays, as well as special holidays. John led a very strict life, abstaining from many forms of indulgences, and his followers may have done the same. There are no rules in the Bible regarding fasting, but it is presented as something good to do in order to get us closer to God. So they had created man-made rules to require fasting twice a week for the Pharisees and Sadducees. But John the Baptist was just kind of fasted all his life kind of thing, only ate certain things. So those 2 different types of fasting. In Jesus's case, he didn't need them to fast. They were right there with God. They can't get any closer than that. So that's kind of the reason.
Jesus answered, can you make the friends of the bridegroom fast while he is with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. In those days they will fast.
Yeah, and this is one of those situations where there's several meanings to this. This is one is in a sense like a parable where he's talking about the guy's night out that the bridegroom has. You're not going to fast during the guy's night out type thing, bachelor party. And then, but when he's gone, then it'd be fine to go back to normal or to do your normal life or fasting or whatever. That's one version. The second version is, of course, Jesus is our bridegroom. And when he's with them, it's not needing to fast because you're right next to God. Fasting is get you closer to God. How much closer than if he's right there in your midst? But when he's
Exactly.
gone, then it's more time to fast and become closer to God. So so that's kind of what they're talking about there. So this is one of those situations where he means two different things when he says things. Based on the prior page, is there any fasting requirement in the Bible?
No,
What is the reason for fasting according to the Bible?
to get closer to God.
If Jesus is with the disciples, can they get any closer to God?
No,
Why or why not? Because he's
because
right there.
Jesus is right there.
Yeah. Jesus compares his disciples not fasting to what kind of event?
The friend, being eating with the friends of the bridegroom.
Yeah. What does Jesus compare himself to?
The bridegroom.
A Jewish wedding was a time for a great celebration, both just before the wedding as well as right after. The reception usually lasted a week. Food and wine were plentiful. What does Jesus predict will happen that will cause his disciples to fast or mourn?
He will leave, and where he's going they can't follow. So at that time they'll fast to be closer to him.
Exactly.
He told them this parable: no one tears a piece out of a new garment to patch an old garment, otherwise they will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old.
Right. He's going to be using a couple examples here, which we're not as familiar with anymore because we don't use these processes anymore, but we still can kind of get an understanding of it. Jesus tells three short parables to explain his way as a new way, Christianity. It just doesn't repair the old way, which is Judaism. A definition of a parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. If an old garment needs a patch, do you take a brand new garment and cut it up to make a patch for the old one?
No,
If you do take a patch from a new garment to patch on the old garment, both will be ruined. Why?
because if you take a patch from the new garment and you put it on the old garment, it won't match the old garment, and the new garment, because you cut the patch out, is now ruined.
Right. Yes, because it's a new piece on the old garment, it doesn't stretch the same way. And then a parable, of course, is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. In this parable, Jesus is comparing what to the old garment?
Uh, er,
What's the
Judaism,
old? Yeah, exactly. In this parable, Jesus is comparing what to the new garment?
Christianity.
Does this mean that Jesus is against the Ten Commandments and all the laws of God gave Moses? Why or why not?
No, he's just expand. He's basically expanding from
Right.
the. It's like you have, you start off with this, but we're going to add this to it, and we're going to make it this.
Correct. Every Ten Commandment he added into his own new covenant, except um, um, meeting on Sabbath day. That he changed that. He said the man isn't man. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, or something like that. So he changed that a little bit, but all the others he basically included and increased. Does this mean that Jesus doesn't believe that any Jews can be saved?
No,
No, they just have to take on a new garment. see
Yeah,
how
exactly.
the old way is no longer valid and change to the new way, which was a problem. And it was a problem even through the New Testament. Many Jewish Christians kept their old ways and expected everybody else to follow those too. You can't bring Gentiles into Christianity until they first are circumcised and are able to follow the laws of the Jews before they go into Christianity, they would say. They would be very upset that Gentiles had a straight line into Christianity.
Okay.
So um, one difference between the two beliefs is sacrifice. In Christianity, who was our sacrifice?
Jesus.
Right. And of course, to add to that, God had the whole temple destroyed, so you couldn't make the sacrifices. So it was eye-opening to me that sacrifices wouldn't just be in the old times. If there was still a temple, they would still be sacrificing today. I
It's
didn't
true.
I didn't assume that. Okay.
No one pours new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the new wine will burst the skins. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be no, no. New wine must be poured into new wineskins.
So they're actually talking about wine that hasn't been fully fermented yet. As the fermentation goes, it's going to expand the goat skin. And if the wineskin is old, it's already expanded all it can, and so new wine is going to burst it. Whereas you put old wine in old wineskin, it's not whatever they call it, and so it's fermenting anymore. So what is a wineskin? A wineskin is a container made out of the skin of an animal known as leather. When new wine is put in a new wineskin, that wineskin expands as the wine ferments. If you put new wine in an old wineskin, that wineskin will probably break when it expands more. In the same way, Jesus is saying his way cannot be molded or contained in the old Jewish ways, that the ordinances, traditions, and rituals of Judaism, the old wineskin, were too rigid to hold the joy, exuberance, and energy of the new way, the new wineskin. What is a wineskin?
It is a container made from animal hide.
Right. Have you ever seen a wineskin, an actual one?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not very frequent anymore. Yeah. What happens to a wineskin when it's used?
Um, okay, this one kind of stepped me up. I put that no one uses it.
Okay. What happens to a wineskin when it's used is it expands. When you put wine in a wineskin, it's going to expand because the fermentation is going to push the leather. So that's why you can't put it in an old wineskin, because the new wine's going to
Ah,
burst it.
okay.
Why should new wine not be put in old wineskin? Because it will burst the wineskin.
Okay, yeah, I got that one. It's just that first one I did.
Yeah, no problem. What is Jesus comparing to the old wineskin?
Judaism,
And what is Jesus comparing to the new wineskin?
Christianity.
Right. And it's just that they don't fit well together. They're similar, but not the same.
Very true. And no one after drinking old wine wants the new, for they say the old is better.
Right. And so this at first is quite confusing, because he's actually saying that the old Judaism way is better, but he's saying no one who drinks the old wine, who enjoys it, no one who's profiting from Judaism is going to want to change. And that
True.
makes sense with the Pharisees and Sadducees. They're not going to want to change. They're profiting from it. In this parable, Jesus is comparing old wine to Judaism and new wine to Christianity. Jesus is saying anyone who faithfully follows and benefits from the Jewish ways will not want to consider the new ways that Jesus brings, as it runs counter to what they have always believed. What does the old wine compare to?
Judaism,
And the new wine?
Christianity.
And then, of course, a parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. 4, based on these parables, did Jesus come to fix the problems with Judaism or to bring a new way?
Bring a new way.
Based on these parables, did Jesus feel that it was going to be easy for faithful Jews to accept his way?
No.
No. And this happens today. There are many religions in today's world that have rituals and traditions. Those people who are in those religions have a very hard time accepting that Christianity has no requirements in order to be saved, that salvation is a free gift and nothing is required to obtain it. Yes, there's a lot of religions that demand things from you in order for you to be saved. So the next story in this chapter is called Jesus Heals at the Pool of Bethesda. Bethesda. They have two words similar, but this one's Bethesda. Bethesda Hospital comes from the name here. John 5, 1 through 15.
Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals.
So what are the Jewish festivals? I'm not going to read these all in detail, but basically we have the Passover, which commemorates the death angel in Egypt during the 10th plague. Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is right after the Passover, and it commemorates the haste of leaving Egypt. The Feast of First Fruits, this happens right after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and it's the beginning of harvest. And the Feast of Weeks, which is known as Pentecost, this is 50 days after the Feast of First Fruits and usually at the end of the wheat harvest. This is usually late May or early June. Then the Feast of Trumpets. This is the Jewish New Year and is usually held in September. It's a day of repentance. It is the only feast there is right now that doesn't have a relationship to something that's happened in the past. Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. It's 10 days after the Feast of Trumpets, and when the high priest will enter and sprinkle blood on the lamb on the mercy seat. And that's also, Then the Feast of Tabernacles, which is a great feast. It's held in late September to early October. It's when they all make out little tents and eat out in tents. And this is commemorates the time they wandered in the wilderness. Then the Feast of Purim has to do with the story of Esther. It's held in March. And so based on all those, and we have basically the months, and I've translated the months into our months, can we figure out which festival this is? Although we can't be sure, here are some clues. John the writer usually refers to the Passover by name, and so he's not referring to this by name, so we can exclude that. There were 3 feasts that the males were required to come to Jerusalem temple: Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Weeks, and Feast of Tabernacles. On the same day, the disciples will pluck wheat. Therefore, it's around the time of wheat harvest, which is in May and June. So that would mean what festival is going on?
Feast of Weeks.
Right, or Pentecost, yes. So sometimes, we have to kind of really do our research to know what time, but it helps to know where we are.
Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda. Bethesda. And which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades.
Right. And the sheep gate, it's interesting. It's also known as the lion gate. Well, Jesus is the sheep and the lion. So that's interesting. The Lion of Judah. And so it's just interesting. And Bethesda, which is a pool. What is another name for the sheep gate?
Lion's Gate.
And what is the pool called near the sheep gate?
Bethesda. Here a great number of disabled men used to lie, blind, the lame, paralyzed, and they waited for the moving of the waters. From time to time, an angel of the Lord would come down and stir up the waters. The first one into the pool, after each such disturbance, would be cured of whatever disease they had. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?"
Right. So there was a pool which had a legend in it that when the angel of the Lord stirred the waters, the first person in it would be healed. I don't know if there was any circumstances where this was proven out or not. Interestingly, the writer of this book doesn't degrade the theory at all, nor does he say that it's true. He just says what's happened. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. And now, obviously, there's going to be invalids and people hurt all around the pool. Why does Jesus pick only one man? Again, we have to realize that healing a person is not the object of Jesus, but what they do for the kingdom is what is important. And so this man may have a reason to be healed. The most important thing to God and Jesus is, are they saved? Healing is not as important as their salvation, really. Who was lying next to the pool?
The blind, lame, paralyzed, disabled people.
We know how long one man had been an invalid. How long was it?
38 years.
What did Jesus ask the invalid?
If he wanted to get well. And I really liked how this played out in The Chosen.
Right. Okay. I'm not sure if I've seen this one yet. How did it play out in The Chosen?
It played out that he was actually a brother of a gentleman that had been trained for the guard, the Pharisee type guard, and who later that brother ended up getting involved, crossing paths with Jesus. But yet the man knew his brother had been an invalid for that time, because he had been an invalid since his birth. And his brother in the beginning was constantly taking care of him. But as he got older and his brother moved into this new position, he kind of left off with him. And so he ended up, 38-year-old, ended up being on his own and actually had to drag himself to this pool. And then every day he tried so hard to get in the pool before anyone else. But because he had to drag himself and couldn't walk or jump into the pool, he was always not able to get there in time.
Right. I kind of remember some of that story. I don't know if it fully developed before I stopped reading and watching The Chosen. And there was no reason why I stopped watching The Chosen other than I have too many things on my plate. That's about it. Yeah. Do you want to get well? It's kind of, it is funny to me because, we seem to enjoy complaining of our problems. I mean, I'm not saying this about you. I'm just saying, like Terry's mom or even Terry sometimes, they'll complain about things. And I say, well, are you going to go to the doctor and get it fixed? Oh, no, I don't want to bother them. Like, I won't. So obviously you don't want to get it fixed or you wouldn't be complaining. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
We all do it. It isn't anybody
yeah.
particular, but it's just funny. You want to get well. Do you want to not do this anymore? Not as easy question as it seems. Yeah.
Sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else does go down ahead of me.
You need to answer that or no?
No, it was my son.
Okay. So what did the man assume Jesus was going to do for him?
Help him to the pool.
Right. According to the belief, who stirred the water?
An angel.
Right. And why is it that the invalid couldn't get into the water fast enough?
Because invalids have to pull themselves along. Like I said earlier, they can't run or jump.
Right. There are a lot of sick and diseased people around the pool. Why do you think Jesus picked this one to heal?
Because he was told that how long he had been disabled.
Right.
He had heard how long this man had been disabled and how long this man, and basically this man had faith that This pool was stirred by an angel, so obviously that tells you that this man has faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and we always don't know exactly why he heals some people and not. But again, we have to come back to the idea that what a person's physical situation is not as much concerning to Jesus as their salvation. And so
Exactly.
if the healing is going to make a difference in the kingdom of God, then that's the important reason why to heal, which is hard on us because we're here living it.
Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath, and so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is the fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away in the crowd that was there.
Right, which is interesting because there's all bunch of these people who are have illnesses, and he heals the one guy probably right near the pool, and how he gets out without people attacking him saying like, he may heal me and swarmed. I don't know, but that's a Jesus thing for you. And forbids you to carry your mat. This reminds me of just what you were talking about. When you leave a room, pick up your stuff. It's like, are you not going to pick up your stuff because it's Sabbath? Come on. But anyway.
All right. Later, Jesus found him in a temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well.
What did Jesus say to the invalid on prior page?
He told him to pick up his mat and walk.
What day of the week did this happen on?
Sabbath.
And what did the Jewish leaders tell the once invalid man?
That it was the Sabbath and the law forbid him from from carrying his mat.
Yeah, good grief. The law of Moses taught that Sabbath must be different from other days. On it, neither animals nor people should work. In the years since Moses, the Jews had included so many man-made laws that nearly every kind of physical activity done during the Sabbath was against the law. The invalid carrying his mat was breaking the law of carrying any kind of furniture on the Sabbath. Did Jesus break a man-made law by healing the invalid? Yes. No kind of medical treatment can be given on the Sabbath according to the man-made law. Did the invalid know who the man was that healed him?
Not right off.
Since there would have been a lot of sick people lying about the pool of Bethesda, how do you think Jesus was able to slip away in the crowd with many others wanting to be healed?
I think that it was because once he said it, he kind of just turned and walked away as the man was picking up his mat.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so he didn't have any fancy robes on. So, if his back's to you and he's walking away, you're just going to assume that it's just anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. How he does this sometimes, I don't know. Did the cured invalid meet Jesus again?
Um, yes,
And where did he meet him?
the temple.
Which he wouldn't have been able to go into prior. What
Yeah.
does Jesus tell him now?
That since he's well, that he needs to stop sinning because if not, something worse will happen.
Does the cured invalid tell the Jewish leaders that Jesus was the one who healed him?
Yes.
Yeah, now he wouldn't have noticed any different. You asked? I'll tell you, I know who it was. It wasn't trying to get Jesus in trouble. He didn't know that would cause him to be in trouble. So we now come to the crossword. So one across, no one pours new wine in an old.
Wineskin.
Good. And then John's disciples often
Fast.
fast and pray. Number 7, where did Jesus go for the Jewish festivals?
Jerusalem.
And then what was wrong with the man at the pool?
Invalid.
What was the name of the pool Jesus healed at?
Bethesda.
Yeah, and what is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning?
A parable,
And 6, no one tears a piece out of a new
garment.
to patch an old one. So we're end of this chapter, and so let me go ahead and turn this off.